Team, it is Friday, so we're going to continue our. Let me adjust that. Continue our work on the conversion of Descent into Avernus into in-command mass combat playtest content, and we've been mashing on Infernal War Machines for the past couple weeks, and I think today we've finally got it cracked. So give me a second here to check in on my. There we go. Check in on my signals on stuff, and for me to hit my channels to do the boosts. And just give me a moment here to blah, 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 and then there. And then, well, hey, while I'm doing this, if you wouldn't mind doing me a huge favor of liking and subscribing and checking out the Patreon link that I have below. Has all the playtest content that's already available on this project. There's also the DMsGuild link that I have there that shows a selection of the books that I've already created that are 100% free to read and pay if you like them. I would love for that. To help support the efforts of all the design time that goes into it, the writing, the hiring of additional writers to help make sure that I do the way it's supposed to be done, as well as editing. This is going to be a pretty great piece. So I'm almost done here, and then we'll get into the specifics of what we got going on. And make sure I got everything good. All right, so that's all my Discord channels popped. And almost done. Stay on target. Pop, and post. Okay, cool. And that is good to go. So let's get into it. All right, so let's see. I'm going to rearrange my window here so that you can Descent into Avernus. So there we go. That's what we're working on today. Okay, so from the notes that we had from previous sessions, let me go ahead and put a timer on. I've got about an hour and a half today to play. So I'm going to put on my timer for, we'll go 20 minutes at a time. Okay, so what we had been working, what we had been attempting is to take these Infernal War Machines and suss them out so that we can have a... That's D&D Beyond. That's where we're supposed to be, right? Where's my bits? Is this the wrong bit? This might be the wrong bit. No, that's the wrong bit. Hold on. Burp. There we go. Beep, beep, beep. Here. All right, so we have the Devil's Ride, which is a large-sized machine. We have the Tormentor, which is a huge-sized machine. We've got the Devil Grinder, which is a gargantuan-sized machine. And then we have the Scavenger, which is a huge-sized machine. But it can carry a hell of a lot more than the gargantuan thing can carry. It can have the same crew capacity as the gargantuan-sized thing, but far more than what the other huge-sized thing has. And the huge-sized thing here has only one onboard weapon and then has big wheels for crushing, while the Scavenger has three onboard, well, has two onboard weapons and two movement engagement type attacks. So there's a lot of inconsistency here between these only 4 examples that Wizards provides, and it's really difficult to try to deconstruct what was the thought process that went behind this. And best we can tell, the thought process is basically the same as magic items, which is there are no rules. It's just they're going on gut, and they're not here to defend themselves. But it's really difficult to figure out how all these mechanics work together. And I've skimmed through a number of different DMsGuild projects, and I haven't seen anyone do any hard deconstruction of how the system works so that it can then be rebuilt and upscaled. There are other projects that put out ideas about different vehicles, but there is also no consistency. So I am attempting to create consistent patterns so that we can scale these things from 5-foot scale maps to 50-foot scale maps to 500-foot scale maps, so that we can utilize vehicles of different sizes in the campaign. Depending, like once Spelljammer comes in, for instance, we're going to want to have a consistent model that we can go from a Devil's Ride, which is a 10 by 10 space that it fills like a horse, all the way up to like an Elithid Nautiloid, which would be filling a 500-foot square because they're huge, right? And we want to have the same kind of math and same curvature moving through all scales so that we can have this system work. This is the 18th session that we've ran. This is the 4th session spent in Avernus specifically. The 14 sessions spent before this have gone through the basic 5-foot scale for squads, the upscaling to 50-foot, 500-foot, 1 mile, 5 miles, 50 miles, etc., as well as the guilds and kingdoms deconstruction system, as well as tasks that the guilds and kingdoms can perform as sort of downtime activities that players can control. So session 4 here of Avernus, we're going to get into the skinny of it. And boy, it's warm. So I'm going to turn on my air conditioner. And I will be RV. Hold on. All right. There we go. Okay, so the difficulty that we were having is that like this is a large size. This is a large size bike. Let's go to the map here. Let's conceal this. Let's get back into here. That's the grid cover. I'm gonna go with this here. We'll go map grid. Good. And grid machines. Okay, so the trick that we're having here is that a Devil's Bike is a 2x2. It's size large, and we know that size large fits 2x2. However, it only allows for one pilot, no weapons, no secondary crew or passengers, and only 100 pounds of cargo. So they're taking this horse-sized 2x2 block and they're reducing it down. And now they say in the content that you can have more. It has a crew capacity of 1, but it specifically says, hey, you can have as many people stacked up and hanging off of this as you want, kind of allowing you to exceed limits. So that kind of says here, and like this looks huge, but it's technically here is about this big, so that big, so it's roughly large. It's certainly bigger than a horse, but it's not the size of an elephant, so we can give it to him. And you can see here with the scale of the person that you can have somebody sitting here, but you could have a guy, here, and another guy here, and another guy here, and here, and on the other side as well, and have a guy hanging underneath as well if you wanted. So when you go back to this map, you've got your pilot, and you've got 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and then 4, 5, 6, 7, 4, 5, and then on the other side 6, 7, and then 8, another guy underneath it. So you could have 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And then you can have 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. According to the rudimentary rules that are given to us into Descent into Avernus, you can have up to 16 people on this motorcycle, but it only has a cargo capacity of 100 pounds. So after you put a person of indiscriminate weight on the machine and strap another 16 guys on top of it, it says that you can stow an extra 100 pounds worth of cargo. So if you can have 16 guys on this and each of them, say, weigh 200 pounds, that's 3,200 pounds plus the extra 100 pounds of cargo weight. You can actually carry a ton and a half. So what that's kind of telling us is that the cargo capacity and the number of people that can ride on this thing don't really mean much at all. They're kind of just ballparking what they think something should be. So using that spirit of ballparking, I'm building a pattern that we can utilize to build machines, right? So let's do that. So what I had done, and we'll get down to this corner here. So this is the map that we're working with, right? And each square here is 5 feet, and then each square here is 50 feet, and that's our most rudimentary scaling in this system. I'm going to pull that free and then be here. Upscaling troops. We've got upscaling 5 grid scale 5 feet. As a 6-second rounds, max hit points per rank, and you have ranks 1 to 5, like 17th level is, or CR 14 plus is its 5th rank. CR 0 to 1 is 1st rank, 2 to 4 is 2nd rank, etc. And as you scale up in size, 50 feet is 10 times the grid scale. So if you've got a normal human that's running for 10 rounds, he's going to be able to scale not 5 feet, but 50 feet. Times 6 is 300 feet as opposed to 30 feet in 1 round, 300 feet in 10 rounds. 10 rounds equals 1 minute times 6 seconds. There you go. So that's how that scaling kind of works. 500 feet to 5,000 feet, round off to a mile. That's our basic scale. We're going to be working in Avernus at this scale, inside these scales today. So what we want to do is we want to build a consistent pattern for these large, huge, and gargantuan-sized vehicles at the 5-foot scale, so that we could then extrapolate and expand and scale up to the 50-foot scale for Zariel's Flying Fortress, which we did in episode 15, which was the first Avernus episode that we had done. It was really easy for us to break down how Zariel's Flying Fortress, and check the playlist that this is associated with for you to check that out. And then we started running into a problem. We're like, well, if this Zariel's Flying Fortress works, how can we have a consistent pattern to deconstruct and then build out the 5-foot scale, the motorcycle, blah, 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 right? So then we choked on it for 2 episodes, and now we've gotten to this place. So 3 weeks into it, stream time, we are now finding a consistent pattern that we can build out of this. So how does that work? So the initial thought that we have here is that, vehicles are different, right? If they are, if we have let's see where we're at. Burp, burp. Okay, great. So if we have like beep, beep, burp, 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 burp. There we go. Okay, great. So in the a 1 foot by 1 foot scale, a 1 square is medium size, 2 by 2 is large, 3 by 3 is huge, 4 by 4 is gargantuan, and that's where DMsGuild scaling ends. And if you were to step up to 50-foot squares at the 1 minute scale, you'd see that a 1 foot square equals a 10 by 10 square. You can move over here into this 50-foot scale. Each one of these squares equals 50 feet, 100 feet, 150, 200, 250, 300. That's 6 squares over the course of a minute. A guy, normal, could walk while conducting combat, moving in that range. So a 50-foot scale is effectively 10 times the scale of what a normal person would operate at. If you if you have a say a devil's bike here at a 2 by 2 scale, and you zoom out to the 50-foot scale, it sits inside of this 50-foot space, right? As does a gargantuan devil's grinder, as does a tormentor, as does a couple tormentors or a couple demon grinders. You've got space for 1, 2, 3, 4 demon grinders inside this 50-foot square. So you can look at this as you can fit 5 demon grinders inside of 1 5-foot square, because you got leftover space here. We have that scaling out here, a gargantuan-sized creature, which is a devil's grinder in this instance. At the 50-foot square, you can fit 5 of them inside of each square. Or you could fit 25 devil's rides, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 25 in tight formation, you can fit 25 Devil's Rides inside of there. So that's how the basic math of that works. And I think it was episode 3 that we did the initial deep dive into that. As you gain, you can scale up the size of your squad from being, say, an individual 5 foot by 5 foot medium-sized space for a small or medium-sized individual. And then you can scale up to a 10 by 10 space in tight formation. You could have 10 by 10 medium-sized creatures in this 50-foot square equals 100. So that's where we get this this scaling from 5 feet equals a single 1 by 1 to 50 feet is 100 or 5 gargantuan. Then if you scale up to the 500-foot scale, at that point we're just going in scales of 10 to make life easier. And again, I think it was 3 or maybe episode 4 that we went into a deeper dive into that. But having said that, you can see that if, like, say, a Devil's Ride has 30 hit points here inside of, let's just go with say a human that has 10 hit points, and if you have 100 of them in packed in tight formation, if this represented a squad, a platoon of 100 soldiers, and if each soldier on average, say if there were minions and had 1 hit point each, then when you scale out to this tight formation of 100 of them, then this would have 100 hit points. That's kind of how the hit point system works on that. And if they were wielding long swords, and if you have 5 foot scale is a single creature doing D8 damage. If you scale up to 50 feet, this is the only wonkiness that happens. It's 10 times the damage, not 100. So there is a little disparage there between the scaling mechanics. But once you jump from 5 feet to 50 feet, then it just continues to curve out to 10 by 10 by 10 by 10 by 10 by 10. So using that same basic mechanics, when you get to this 10 by 10 scale, if you've got a squad of 10 by 10, if you got a bunch of soldiers that are running around with long swords at the 50-foot scale, they would be doing D8 times 10 damage. So at the 5-foot square is D8 damage. At the 50-foot square is D8 times 10 damage. A normal person could have 10 hit points. They could have anywhere from 1 to 10 hit points, and they're still alive. So you could go from that 10 hit point scale to the 50-foot scale at 100 hit points, and that's that times 10. But it also has the liquid fluidity of you have 100% combat capacity. You're 100% combat capable at 1 hit point as you are at 10 hit points. So the hit points is a sort of theoretical number that doesn't necessarily line up to how healthy an individual creature is. So having said that, we're now looking at, okay, so if we're going to go with a 2x2, if we're going to go with this system as we're playing it out, getting back here to a Devil's Ride, which is a large size, and then you're going over here to a Tormentor or a Scavenger, that's huge size, and then going to a 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, a Devil Grinder, which is a gargantuan size. These are your 3 basic sizes. They don't have a machine that fits inside of a 1x1, but theoretically it would be possible as a single medium square that either a small or a tiny sized creature would be able to pilot just as easily. But they don't go that small because most creatures are medium size, and you need to be in. If you're going to ride something, it has to be a larger size than you. So that's why they start at size large. Let's see. Okay, great. So we're looking at the Devil's Ride, and it is a. Line that up a little bit better. It is listed as okay. So what's our variables? We have. Let's go to the document we've been working on here to keep this orderly. Hey, Tyler. But I'll be a viewer in the background. Oh, that's so kind. Thank you. Well, you are certainly welcome, obviously, to catch up after the stream. So here's a bunch of muck that we tried to fish our way through last session, but we've got it kind of figured out. So what are our variables? Variables is crew capacity, is cargo, and the other variable is equipment, gear. We're just going to call it gear, which is like weapons, defenses, grappling hooks, wrecking balls, and just the various weapons that the vehicle has, right? So these are the various gear that it can have, and then the other variable is space. So taking these 4 variables into account, going back to our map here, we're looking at the Devil's Ride, which is a large size object which fits inside of a 2x2 space, and it has a crew. So let's go with variables, and then let's go with here is Devil Ride, has a crew of 1, has a cargo of 100 lb, has 0 gear, and space is large. So the system that I've got built out here is that each of these variables take up space inside of the vehicle. So if we were to build this out, it's got a crew, it's got cargo, which we'll call an A. So let's go ahead and make these. Let's go ahead and put these things in here. I'm going to call it C, A, G, number by number. So we've got G, we got crew, which is one crew, and then we've got A, which is cargo capacity, and then so I'm gonna do this instead. And this isn't used, and this isn't used, right? So what does that kind of tell us? That kind of tells us that it's being visualized. It fits inside this 2x2 space, but it's only actually using two spaces inside of that area. So let's look at something a little more complicated, which is the Tormentor. A Tormentor is huge, so we're going to use this space here. Whoop. Start. All right, continuing into our second 20-minute burst. So we got an hour-ish. Tormentor, 3x3 space. So we'll go here. Tormentor's crew is 4. Cargo is 500 lb. It's a size huge vehicle, but can only carry 500 pounds. It's weird. It's weird. We'll get to that in a minute. Gear. So the gear that it has is let's see. It's got a harpoon. It's got a single harpoon flinger. We don't count the helm because you have to be at the helm to drive the thing, which means you have the minimum crew of 1. So your crew capacity equals 1 is where the helm is at. So that's a freebie. That's a freebie space. So gear, it has 1 harpoon flinger, and it has this crushing wheels. And these crushing wheels is basically an overrun sort of affair, where if you are 2 sizes larger and you enter the space of a creature that's 2 sizes smaller or even smaller than that, then they're going to be dealt damage automatically. So that's just kind of, I'm running over you. That doesn't require any gear space unto itself to do the thing. But it has raking scythes, which is when the Tormentor moves within 5 feet of a creature that isn't prone or another vehicle for the first time in the turn, it can rake the creatures or vehicles with its claws. So it has raking scythes, which we're going to designate as a different piece of gear that's going to take up space in the rig, and its space is L equals 2x2. And the Tormentor is huge, equals 3x3. Okay, so it has a crew capacity of 4. It has cargo of 500 pounds. It's got 2 pieces of gear. So that's 2, 6. Technically, it needs what? 7. If we're not considering how much size is required for X amount of weight, and we're not really calibrating how much weight something can carry by its strength score. Technically, you can, like, your carrying capacity equals 15 times your strength, and then, like, if you're large size, you double it, so it'd be 30 times your strength, right? Well, the Devil's Ride has a 100-pound carrying capacity, and it has a strength of 14. So 14 times 15 equals 210 pounds before we multiply anything for its size, right? So we already know that the cargo capacity that you're supposed to be able to carry using the rules of strength from the player's handbook do not apply to Infernal Machines. So that essentially means we can eliminate cargo as a variable to consider. So how do we play it out instead? What we can do instead is we can declare that if you have cargo space on your machine, then if you can essentially carry anything that can fit, and instead of worrying about the weight of what you are carrying, you instead worry about what is the space that item requires. So we no longer consider the carrying capacity of that item. We instead have we instead convert cargo into space. So if we're looking at a cargo 2x2, you've got the crew of 1, and then you've got open space. And that open space could be either gear, cargo, or crew, right? So what happens if you put gear on this motorcycle, which is like a weapon, for instance? Let's look at the Raging Skies. Moves within 5 feet of a creature that isn't prone or another vehicle for the first time on a turn. It can make the creature or vehicle with its protruding blades. Creature moves out of the way. A creature moves out of the way and takes no damage if it succeeds on a dexterity saving throw. So that is not an active weapon. So let's instead look at the Demon Grinder. The Demon Grinder has chompers, which requires crew. Has a Wrecking Ball, which requires crew. And it has those crushing wheels, which does not require crew. Where did we go? Go back. Thank you. And then Helm requires crew, which we already talked about. Chomper requires crew here. So you got the Chomper, you got the Wrecking Ball, and you got crushing wheels, right? So if we go back to the Tormentor, it has raking scythes, and those raking scythes do not require crew. So that essentially becomes an action. It's either an action or, as is listed here, it's a saving throw that can be applied. So we are going to remove the raking scythes as a piece of gear. So we'll call it 1+1 for now, just to take that into account. But so let's see. If we're looking at the weapon, we could theoretically put a weapon on the back end of the Tormentor, of the motorcycle, the Devil's Ride, right? So you got the crew that's piloting 1, and then you've got this open space, and this open space could be a cargo, it could be an additional crewman, or could it be gear? So the question there becomes, is it gear? Well, if it requires a crew capacity to make the thing work, like for example, the Harpoon Fleener requires 1, and the Raking Skies doesn't. What we're looking at here is, does these things take cargo capacity to do it? And my current thought process is that that gear takes up a spot. And then you have to have, so like you would have crew, you would have gear, and then you would have to have an additional crewman spot. So that'd be 3 spaces. Technically, there's space for all of that inside this large space. You have weapon, you have a second crewman, and then you have space open for cargo. or a third crewman, right? And the way that it's represented is that these people are hanging off of it or whatever. So the Devil's Ride can effectively be a 2x2 space. So let's see if we had like the helm as its own thing, and then you got a crew that's piloting that helm. And then you could have a weapon on it, and then you could have a crewman that oversees that weapon. That gives you a 2x2 space. That would, if you've got a guy here that's sitting at a gun turret, right, and you're in a little gun port, that's kind of sitting inside the same 5-foot square. And so that would be like a motorcycle, right? That's got the guy that's riding on it, and he's in the helm position. And you've got a guy here that's in like a weapon thing, or could instead have extra cargo space. So basically the 2x2 space is the helm. So that means we can consider the helm to be a piece of gear. And the cargo space is a space 1, or it could be up to 2. So you can fill the 4x4 space by either giving it crew, cargo, or gear in each one of these spaces. So you look at the Tormentor, you got cargo here for the Tormentor, and that is, we'll just call that space. And you got gear, which is going to be 2 because you got the helm and you got the weapon, the shooter. And then you got that +1, which is the raking sides. So let's look to see how this should line up. So you got 4 for crew. You've got 2. That's 6 with the helm and the inborn weapon. So we got crew, 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 a helm, an inborn weapon, and now we've got cargo space, cargo space, cargo space. That means that we have room open for another piece of, you got H for helm, G for weapon, G for weapon gear, G for weapon gear. We can accommodate both of these weapons inside of the frame of this, and we can hit all our marks. Let's go to the Scavenger as an alternate. Okay, so let's go to the. Actually, let's do the Demon Grinder next. So Demon Grinder uses a 2x2 space. Grinder has a crew of 8. Cargo is whatever space, and we'll get to cargo in a minute. Cargo, we have that. Gear. Okay, so let's see what the gear we have laid out here. We've got the helm, which requires 1, chompers, which require 1, a wrecking ball, which requires 1, and 2 harpoon flingers, which requires 1 each. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we got the crushing wheels, which don't count. So we got 5 and a crew of 8. So let's see how this parses out. We got helm. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3. This is supposed to be G. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right? So you got the helm. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you got 8 guys. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And that leaves 2 spots open, which we can use for cargo. I can't write an A with marching ants. There we go. So we have our cargo capacity here, right? So far, this is working out. Let's take a look at the Demon Grinder. At the Scavenger. Gear has 5, and space is G equals 4x4. Scavenger. Scavenger, capacity of 8. Crew is whatever. Gear, let's look at the gear. Helm requires 1. Grappling claw requires 1. 2 harpoon cleaner is 4. And then you got the crushing wheels, which I don't know how that's supposed to crush. But anyway, that's what they say. And then it's got cargo capacity, right? So gear equals 1, 2, 3, 4. And then space is H equals 3x3. Okay, so let's see. What do we got going on here? We've got boop, 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 8. So we got crew. Uh-oh. Already running into a problem, aren't we? Now we have, on top of that, we have 4 pieces of gear, which is gear. Now we're over capacity, gear. And then we have cargo. So, what does this tell us? It worked fine for Devil's Ride, with room to spare. It worked great with the Tormentor. It worked perfect with the Demon Grinder. So large, size huge, and Gargantuan work perfectly. Devil's Ride is inconsistent in that it's basically making it like a horse, like a really fast horse, and limiting your capacity for crew, cargo, whatever, as such. So that means that as listed, it works out. The space is there, and we have extra room. So it only requires the helm, the one crewman for the helm, and then it has 2 spaces over, which could be additional crew, or it could be a weapon and a piece of crew, or it could just be a lot more cargo, right? So we're going to get to cargo in a minute. But getting back to this, if we're looking at the Tormentor, the Scavenger, they say it's size huge, and it's 9,000 pounds compared to the Gargantuan vehicle, which is 12,000 pounds. I'm thinking that Scavenger was supposed to be size Gargantuan, and it just didn't make it. I have no idea why they think this needs to be a size huge as opposed to Gargantuan. There are no maps in Avernus that limit what area these things can get into. So I'm under the impression that making this Scavenger huge was actually an editing mistake. Kind of like Silvery Barbs being a first level spell is an editing mistake. Or that maybe like Boots of Flying being an uncommon item is that true? Is that item? Are Boots of Flying uncommon? I will. Okay, so this is Phil. He's in the world of trashing on WOTC when he doesn't like what he sees. And Boots of Flying. And like previously, I had said winged boots. That's what they're called. Winged boots. There we go. Show me. Uncommon. They give you flight and they're uncommon. It's more like a rare item to me. There's a lot of people that kick shit about the intuitive design that 5e uses, and that it's supposed to use what is it? Natural language, so that what they say is what they mean, and it means what you intuit that it would. But I think the actual running joke is that the intuitive design is that they design it by intuition, not logic or structure. And magic items are certainly a call-out. Feats are another great call-out. Spells are a third call-out. And those are like 3 significant things in the game that have heavy impact. So it's not unusual. It's not surprising that we would see potentially not a lot of thought being put into how these things are being scaled and built. So my proposal then would be that the scavenger isn't supposed to be huge, but instead it's supposed to be gargantuan, which gives it tons of cargo space, right? Merge that down. So it has more cargo space than what the Demon Grinder has. So let's take a look at that. Demon Grinder, carrying capacity, 1 ton. Let's look at the Scavenger, carrying capacity, 2 tons. Oh, really? So, twice the capacity. So that's my thought. A, Scavenger is supposed to be sized gargantuan. And B, the actual space that requires, like if you were to go with this, that means each square equals 250 pounds. If you go with this, each square equals 500 pounds. If you go with this, where the carrying capacity is technically 2 squares, if you only have cargo of 100, that means that here, each square equals 50, right? So it goes from large-sized creature has 50 pounds per square. Here, cargo capacity equals 200. That size huge. Cargo capacity is 250 per square. And then here, cargo capacity is 500 per square, because here at Gargantuan, cargo capacity also equals 500. Where's the logic, you will ask? There is none. There is no logic here. Even if I were to make this like if I were to make crew equals helm equals 1 space, and that leaves 1 space open. Like if I were to build the Devil's Ride like a motorcycle, like this, that's some 3E looking horse there. That is a large, long, as opposed to large, wide sort of creature, right? Where you would have crew equals helm, both sit in the same spot, leaving 1 spot open, which would be your cargo space. That would be 1 square equals 100, right? So then that would mean that would go from 100 to 250 when you scale it from large to huge. Woo! We're doing good today, folks. We got good timing going, and then scales to 500 from there. There's still no logic, right? So what I am proposing for cargo instead is the amount of cargo you can carry anything if it can fit inside the space available. And what does that let us do? So that allows us to build for instance, a scavenger, a gargantuan-sized scavenger, right? That's what we're building, gargantuan-sized scavenger, that has a helm, 1 pilot, and then has all of this space open that you can use for cargo capacity. And each square, now you've got a guy, you've got let's zoom in. You've got gear, which is your grappling claw. And then you've got I'm gonna move this, crew, and then crew. You got crew that works the grappling hook. You've got crew that works the helm, and then you got this 4x3 space that's left over. So my idea here is that you can carry anything that you can fit in open space. So a gargantuan-sized vehicle with enough tow space or enough carrying space would be able to just carry whatever it is that you can put into it. In this example, we would be able to put a tormentor on the back of a gargantuan, a 4x4 scavenger, and you would still have 4 spaces over that you could have crew, and crew. But look at this, we can go with G for your grappling hook off the back end, and then a crew member here. And then we could... Can we build this out so that we have space for it to carry? Like there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 spaces open right here. So if we eat this up with the H and the C for the crew, let's say we get rid of the crew capacity 1 here. So we got one guy that's going to drive until he parks to hook up a tormentor. So he's going to work his grappling hook to grab that thing and then hoist it up on. You got your scavenger here, and then you got your tormentor here, and then I'm going to scale that. What way do I need? I'm going to scale this. So it sits inside this 4x4 space, right? Right. And then you got this tormentor here, which sits inside this 3x3 space. So when you hit this gear and you put the grappling hook and you lift it up and you hoist it onto your thing, bam, it fits, right? That's the idea. So can we rebuild this machine so it's got H, C, and then G? If we got a 3x3 for a tormentor to fit in here, we cannot do it. There is not a way for us to have space for a large size and a huge size thing to both fit inside of a gargantuan space. So much like in the squad system below, if your crew, like if you have like one ogre and then you're commanding another ogre and then you're commanding a third ogre, and then you want to be in that squad with them, if you want to have a fourth ogre with you, that 4x4 ogre, it doesn't fit inside a 4x4 space like you want. It actually has to fit inside of a 5x5 space instead. So it can't function as a 4x4. It has to function as a 5x5. But we already know from our conversation here that we can have vehicles that scale up to a 10x10. You've got a 2x2 here for a Devil's Ride, and then you've got the Tormentor 3x3. We now know that a Scavenger is supposed to be at least a 4x4, but it doesn't have to be limited to just a 4x4 because In Command system explores scaling spaces larger than a 4x4 gargantuan. Now, keep in mind that the Monster Manual and the DMG limit creature sizes to quote-unquote gargantuan, as in there is no effective scaling beyond a a gargantuan footprint, right? So looking at that, we know that a 4x4, this is gargantuan. That's a G. But we also know that the Tarrasque is 50 feet by 20 feet, using up this area, which is also considered gargantuan. But obviously, a Tarrasque could pick up and chew on and then spit out a Devil Grinder very easily because it's so vastly out. It could eat and then let it pass through over the course of a couple hours out the other side. It can just shit all over the grinder, right? Certainly more so a Tormentor, even more so a Devil's Ride, certainly more so a medium-sized person, right? This is what we're looking at, like what can this thing eat? Well, using the in-command system, you can actually have a Tarrasque running around inside this 50-foot scale as it's 50 by 70, so you could have a Tarrasque fitting inside of a 2x2, a large-sized creature at the 50-foot scale. And then you could have a Torment, like a Devil's Grinder here, or a bunch of them fitting inside this space, which is, again, vastly outscaled. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. There's your 4x4. 1, what? You got 2 here. You got 3 here, 4 here, 5 here, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. You can fit a bunch of them in there. That's what I'm trying to say, is you can fit a bunch in. So this thing kind of meshes. So going back to the point of it is, so the quick skinny that we have, or that's not what we want to do. The quick skinny again here is that each piece of gear equals 1 square. Each crew member equals 1 square. And then cargo capacity, which is an A, equals square times space. So if you want to, so you can have a scavenger, and we're going to call a scavenger just a general type of vehicle that could be. You could have a 2x2 scavenger if you wanted. That's like a quad runner, right? It's got 4 wheels, it's got the helm, it's got its cargo, it has a grappling hook, and it has a crew member for the grappling hook, right? No, you can't do that because you have to have space open for cargo capacity. So a 2x2 here with a cargo helm, grappling hook, and 1 space open. With that 1 space open means it could only carry a medium-sized thing. So how does D&D work? If you want to ride something, it has to be at least 1 size larger than you. So sticking with that same theme, if you want to be able to have a large size something fit aboard your scavenger, it has to be a smaller size than the scavenger itself, which gives you the room for the helm, the cargo, a grappling hook, and then you've got all this open space, or or you could have a weapons grappling hook and a weapons grappling hook here, and you could have cargo and cargo, or rather crew and crew, to man these 2 weapons, and even use the grappling hook as a weapon in combat, and you still have this 1 space open. But when it comes to, well, let's pick up our rig and haul that, let's haul that that Devil's Ride away in its 2x2 space. Well, then this crew does as Avernus suggested, and have them just hang off the side, which apparently they can do, so that you would have space open for you to fit the large size vehicle on the back of the huge size scavenger. If you're choosing to have your war rig like the Tormentor that we had, default was a helm and crew using the helm to pilot. It has 1 weapon, which requires 1 crew, and then it's got all this open space for it to do stuff with. We could go, if you wanted to, you could have the blades eat up a space, and that still leaves enough room open for you to, say, carry a demon, a Devil's Ride with you. So, like, if you want to have a psychic thing here, and you only got 2 guys that are running your crew, or you could eat up all of your capacity and add in more weapons, crew, and this piece of gear here doesn't require any crew because it's blades on the front of this thing. So what this is allowing you to do is start, you can start using the space on a map to create. Looks like my Photoshop crashed. So I'm going to let that shut down and then fire it back up again. There we go. And nope, that was the Greenest in Flames map that we had scaled at 500 at the 50-foot scale. Nope, what we want is, there we go. Right back at it. And our button works. Good. Sometimes it locks up. Photoshop, ever since they went to subscription services where they can just spontaneously download stuff onto your computer, crap. Horrible decision. Obvious money grab. Well done, Photoshop. Well done, Adobe. Do your money grab, but you've provided us with a significantly worse product as a result of it. I'm still not willing to let go of Photoshop because the color tools are amazing on it. And colorblind people like me need as many color tools as we can get so we can operate in color. But that's neither here nor there. I will say what is here, though, is once this book gets done with the rough draft, and then I hand it off to Ukulele Bard to do the cleanup on the text, and then hand it off to Adam Hancock to do the edits on it, and then it gets passed back to me with the text finished. We're going to be doing all of this. We're going to be doing a shitload of illustrating for this book. We're going to do all the layouts on this book. We're going to walk through the process. We began with the rough draft here. We provided a play test on my Patreon. Check the doobly-doo down below. That play test is there for people to play with. I've ran a number of play tests with people that have never seen this stuff before. I've been play testing with this with my weekly team as well. So far, all the feedback is coming pretty good. Throughout the end of this month and probably into August, we're going to be using Descent into Avernus to do play testing with Infernal Machines like we have here at 5th level, maybe 6th. We're going to be doing a salvage mission at 9th level. We're going to be doing attack Zariel's Flying Fortress at 9th, maybe 12th level. We're going to have a siege on the Scab Fortress, which will be 12th level, and then we will be doing the Unchaining of Elturel as a 15th level challenge. All of these using the mass combat system, where we're going to have anywhere from like maybe 7 or 8 trucks and a convoy working with us, up to maybe 12,000 demons sieging Elturel for us to be able to unchain it. So depending on how we have things play out and how we work through the situation, we're going to have 4 separate play tests at 4 different levels for us to see how this stuff meshes out within the curve of leveling that's expected inside of Descent into Avernus. So when this thing publishes, we'll then be able to put out a pay what you want promo piece to support the product, saying here's 100%. You get to see all the playtest content once it goes through playtest, and we hand it off for actual writing and editing. That's the last you'll see of it until you come back to my stream and see the page layouts. But you won't actually be able to look at the documentation until the final product that will be published on DMsGuild. It'll be 100% free preview. You'll be able to read it cover to cover as a preview that you can then decide this is worth purchasing. Please click. And that will meet the rules that DMsGuild has. So an interesting thing about game design is you can't copyright game mechanics, but you can copyright the text that's used to express those mechanics. Oh boy. So the playtest stuff, I can have that be available to people publicly for them to look at it. But once that playtesting is done, that's when you go into serious text revision so that it meets the natural language format that 5e uses, which is why we hire an additional writer to comb through it, and then we hire an editor to make sure that it's properly formatted so that when it gets passed back to me, the text is good. I then get to lay it out and then put in illustrations, charts, tables, and examples of how the system works. And none of that final text is what would have been available in the playtest document. But then moreover, we then pull off the playtest content, because you're going to get the whole document available for you to look at and preview later. So we can maintain our integrity of having you look at stuff that's 100% preview for you to decide, is this worth my investment of maybe $10 or $20 or whatever we're going to end up price pointing it at. It's probably going to be 115 some odd pages. So we'll probably put it at $20 raw, and then offer discount promo stuff. And you can either keep an eye out for the discount promo sale, pay for it full price if you want to support the team that way, or just look at it for free and decide it's not worth your time and throw it away and not pay anything. We're online B. Dalton books, folks. We're online Walden books. You can. I remember as a 12-year-old when I first started playing D&D back in the 80s. That I wanted to, I didn't have a lot of money, and my parents, because I was only 12, I had an allowance. I basically could ask for 1 book a month, is what they would allow me to have, and it was like $8 back then. It was $8 for a hardback book. And they're like, yeah, you can have 1 a month. So I would go to B. Dalton, and I would go to my parents would go to the mall all the time back in the 80s. Sometimes I'd catch a ride with my sister. And I could literally go to the bookstore and sit in there and read it cover to cover. And as long as you were cool with the staff that was on, it's like, hey, I'm a D&D enthusiast. I want to buy a book, but I want to make sure I know which one I get. I want to make sure that I'm still reading here. Am I still good? Okay, great. I've been having problems with my microphone lately, so I just wanted to do a double check real quick. But yeah, so back in the 80s, I'd go to Walden Book. I would grab like the Dungeoneer's Survival Guide from first edition. I would go back and sit in a chair, and I would read through as much of it as I needed to know, yeah, I absolutely want to buy this. Boy, I love the Dungeoneer Survival Guide. A lot of people really bag on the old school random like percentiles versus like rolling a d12 versus rolling a d6 versus rolling 2d10, but it's not percentile dice. There's a ton of different variables that went into how first edition. It was like a cacophony of hundreds of different subsystems. It was kind of like a helicopter that it's just a bunch of spinning pieces that are bolted together and for some crazy miracle actually works. That's what first edition D&D was. It is the helicopter of RPGs. And what we're building here is we're building a flying saucer. And that 5e was a great piece of machinery to build a flying saucer where it's all built out of the same cohesive structure, and it's just what variables and what bonuses go into modifying the difficulty target number that you're trying to hit. Typically somewhere between 1 and 32 is your range on a D20, plus bonuses capping out at, say, plus 12 bonuses off of your character. So that's kind of the comparison. And I love the Dungeoneer Survival Guide. Looking back at it, yeah, it's absolutely antiquated, but it 100% works. So we have what we're building out here now is a unified system that has everything curved together. So stepping back into it, all the hula-baloo aside, we're looking at here. Let's go back into, so what you can do now is like they have the Infernal Machine rebuild in the D&D Beyond, and that is absolutely bait click. Do not bother with it. The Infernal Machine, that is what it is, Infernal Machine rebuild. It kind of implies that they're providing you a system to build your own Infernal Machine, but it absolutely is not that. It is an Eldritch Machine adventure hook supplement that's like $10. And Eldritch Machines is a term that's existed, but was kind of coined by Keith Baker for Eberron in 3rd edition, where you can just make up an artifact or like a continent-sized piece of machinery that creates a magical effect. So what the Infernal Machine rebuild did was it created a hypothetical wish machine and then provided about 8 or 9 different plot hooks for you to take this infernal this wish machine and drop it into one of the campaigns that they've already published. Descent into Avernus, Storm King's Thunder, Lost Lab of Qualesh, Dungeon of the Mad Mage, which I will also recant on. As I understand, that is a campaign that rolls from level 1 to 20, and in a previous session I had bagged on Wizards of the Coast for not knowing how to run 4th tier content because they've never actually published a 4th tier adventure in 5e, and I have to recant that because they say that the Dungeon of the Mad Mage is supposed to go through 20th level. But I'll still stand behind throwing dirt at them, saying that they don't really know how to run 4th tier at all. So take that and come at me, bro. But having said that, I am actually building a system for you to be able to build ad hoc your own Infernal War Machines. So that is what we are going to do. We are tentatively calling this Infernal War Machine Shop, IWMS. That is a horrible name, work in progress title, but we have essentially built a system that allows you to create your own schematics, diagrams for creating Infernal War machines. So we have basic templates, right? We already know the basic templates, which are size large and size huge and size gargantuan. Those are the only 4 sizes that they technically support in the Descent into Avernus. So that's where we start. So then we have our gear space, we have our crew space, and then we just have open cargo. So when you're building your machine, first you pick the size of machine that you want, and then you decide how you want it to be crewed. So you have to have a helm, so we're going to call that H. We're going to have weapons, which we're going to call W. Got X, which is cargo, and we're going to call that, we'll call it cargo space. No, we'll call X as an open space, and then we'll have C for crew. So when you're building these things, you can build your own war machine. First, you start with the chassis, the basic chassis, and then you have what size do I want to have this thing go for. So like if I'm going to have a size large, I'm going to have crew, and I'm going to have helm, and then you have open space for cargo, cargo, or extra passenger space, right? And then so we'll go X. That's all you technically need to have on the Devil's Ride. If you're going, and again, we did all this, down here. So we got the Devil's Ride, which is the Tormentor, which is helm, crew, one weapon, a crewman for that weapon. You've got the blades, and then you've got open space, open space, open space, open space. That's basically how that works. And then you got the Demon Grinder, which was helm and crew. And how did that go again? Grinder had 8 spaces open, has gear of 5, helm, crew, weapon, say weapon, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Is that right? Harpoon flingers, wrecking ball, chomper. Oh, yeah, that's right. Oh, we'll put the chomper at the front. We'll put the wrecking ball at the back with its crew, weapon station crew, and then you got the chomper with a crew, and that leaves enough space open for all of this. So you got 6 spaces open here in this scenario. So that's cool. And and then you got the scavenger, which is an open, which is like you could go with a scavenger, which has the helm, the crew, and it's got the grappling hook, and that's all you really need. So you have you could have a size huge vehicle here, and yeah, we already figured out there's no way for us to be able to fit another large size thing on here, but that leaves you with plenty of cargo space, plenty of capacity for crew, but this basically looks like the word I'm looking for is tow truck. It's basically a tow truck. Let's talk about tow trucks. So we know that in the system, if you're able to carry anything smaller than you, and we're not worrying about how much those things weigh, as long as they can fit inside the allocated space that you produced, right? But then there's also dragging things. So you could theoretically have a winch or a grappling hook or whatever, and you could potentially drag something bigger than you, even though it's larger than you. So you could drag behind you something that is, say, one size larger. So you could take your 4x4, you could take your 3x3 scavenger, and with your grappling hook, and let's go back into the scavenger here. Scavenger has its helm, has its crewman, and has its back gear. It has space open on its flatbed for a large size, like a Devil's Ride or like a Doom Buggy or something. Has enough space open and room for extra crew. But it could also could drag the vehicle behind it. So it's a larger size, so you could use this huge size scavenger to drag a demon grinder behind it if you wanted to. Dragging things slows you down. So going back, folding into the rest of the document, which we talked about before, which was movement, piloting, action economy. Normally, when you're commanding troops, you have a free verbal command to have the troop do what it wants, but then it's in tandem, so it operates at the same time as you. So you can issue a verbal command to have your squad perform an action, and then you can use a bonus action to give another command, to have the squad take a second action, and then you could use your normal action to issue a third command to have your squad act again. So the squad can act upon verbal command. You can use your own action economy to have it attack twice, kind of like a ranger with its pet. And then you can use your normal action to have it act again. So those are 3 actions that any character can take. And then if you have like multiple attacks, like if you're a 20th level fighter, you can, instead of using that one action, you could break it up into 4 additional actions. So a 20th level fighter actually has 6 commands they can issue a squad that they're commanding each round, which is why marshals are just better commanders in general than other classes. But you can have like bard swords, or a blade slinger wizard, or a hexblade warlock. Classes that give you extra, like paladin, ranger, classes that give you extra attacks per round, give you additional commands that you can issue each turn. So that allows you to have more action economy that you can use. Since we're just now inventing this, I am opposed in general to having fighters as pilots use their increased weapon capacity, use their increased attack action economy to increase the amount of actions that you can issue to a vehicle that you're piloting, because you have to literally pilot it yourself. So I'm thinking that the attack action increases that combat types get is only working with attack type actions. You are still limited to the maximum 3 action economy per round for you to issue commands as though you were, say, a cleric or a rogue, for instance. Like a rogue would make a great pilot. An artificer would make a fantastic pilot because they can become experts at things that, and they have bonuses that they can use to, like, say, ability checks to like navigate through obstacles and stuff like that. So how would this work? If we are looking at we're going to standardize the distance. It's going to be 100 feet per round at the 5-foot scale. That is just the standard scaling that we have. I know that the Devil's Ride has a 120-foot movement, while everything else only has a 100-foot movement. So that's interesting. That means that we could potentially take this large size space with its helm and its crew, and then it's got the cargo capacity, right, leaving this space open. We could potentially have gear increase movement speed. We could convert this Tormentor, which is huge size. It's got huge and crew. It has a base movement of 100. It has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 spaces open. That could be 240. If all you have is engine filling this thing to make go fast, you could increase its scale from 100 feet per round to 240 feet per round, right? That's the idea. We're now in the theoretical space because we already worked through the basic mechanics of how this stuff works together. And you have the action economy of you have 100 feet per round, and then if you use your bonus action, 100 feet per round, and then you use your standard action, 100 feet per round. In one round, 6 seconds, you can make your thing go 100, 100, 100. That's a total of 300 feet in a round. And if you scale up to the 50-foot square, I like this. If you use all of your action economy, then you could do 1 50-foot square, 2 50-foot square, 3 50-foot square, 4 50-foot square, 5 50-foot square, 6 50-foot square. That's 300 feet. So in a single round, you could have, operating at the 50-foot scale, you could have war machines, infernal war machines zipping across terrain at this 300-foot scale. 300 feet per 6 seconds equals 3,000 feet at the 1 minute scale is 18,000 feet at the 1 hour scale. 1 minute times 60, 180,000. And then if you divide that by 5,000 equals 36. That means 300 feet per round equals 36 miles per hour. So, or basically 100 feet equals 12 miles per hour. So you could, if it was like, say, 200 feet, that would be able to kick you up to 72 miles per hour. Or if you had 240 feet, what would that be? Boy, I'm mathing my brain. That'd be like 78 miles per hour, something like that. So that's the thought that goes on there. And then so when you're building a machine and you take your let's go with a tormentor. You've got your helm and your crew, and then you've got, say, a weapon and crew. These weapons can be used by these crew using their normal attack action economy. That if you have an action, you can use an attack action once, or if you're a ranger or a paladin or an armor artificer, you've got 2 attacks per round. Or if you're a fighter, you could potentially get up to 4 attacks per round using this weapon. Another thought, say a harpoon flinger. It does what? 2d8 damage. So this weapon on attack does 2d8 damage. And that is inside of a 5-foot square. And then we could upscale. You could have, like, for example, we looked at this last time. A ballista does 1d4 times 10 damage as a 2x2 space, while a trebuchet takes up a huge size space, and it does 4d10. So we could theoretically build a rig that has its helm, its crew of piloting the helm. You then put a trebuchet on the back of that truck, and you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spaces open. What was, going back to the playtest document that we have available, let's go to the end of the document to look at weapons. Wow. Trebuchet does 8d10 damage. Holy hibiscus. And what's its crew capacity? Let's see. Crew rank, trebuchet, load, aim, fire, fire range, range. I am not finding it here, so let's go to our handy dandy hands. Let's see if D&D Beyond can find trebuchet. Siege equipment, trebuchet. Nice job, guys. Let's see. Ballista, cauldron, suspended, mangolin, ram, siege, tower, trebuchet. Huge object. A trebuchet, typically trebuchet. Let's see. Where does it say? A trebuchet is a powerful catapult that can throw a payload, a high arc. For trebuchet to fire, it must be loaded and aimed. It takes 2 actions to load a weapon, 2 actions to aim it, and 1 action to fire. A trebuchet typically hurls a stone. However, it can launch other kinds of projectiles, such as barrels of oil or sewage, with different effects. I'm sure sewage would have a very different effect from a rock. Okay, so it's a number of actions to load and fire. So it takes 2 actions to load, 2 actions to aim, and 1 action to fire. That's 5 actions that it requires, right? So if you've got a normal crew, you got a trebuchet here, you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You got 5 crew that could work that trebuchet. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of these guys can make this trebuchet go once per round. So that kind of lines up. And you could then, once around, have it launch a trebuchet stone at your opponent and deal crushing damage against like against a devil's ride. It gets hit by a trebuchet stone. But you would have to have capacity for that trebuchet stone to carry stuff. So I would think that if you've got a huge size machine, that it can at best hurl stones that are 2 sizes smaller than it, but I don't want to get too granular. But I think having cargo space of large for all the stones that you would need to carry to make the trebuchet go, I think that makes sense. So if we're dealing with small scale things that are only doing like D8 damage or 2D8 damage or D10 damage, that the ammo that's required is effectively what? Tiny, and only needs a small space inside of the weapon to work. So everything there is self-contained within that 5-foot square. And that makes sense then that you'd have to have crew sitting in a separate square working the gun, because the way that I'm envisioning it is these harpoon launchers, like a Chocanu, has a clip. And they shoot multiple per round, and you would refilling the clip would be an action separate itself, like reload. But as long as you've got a clip that's chain feeding these harpoons that are launching off of it, as long as you have an attack action, you can fire another harpoon until you run out of ammo. Then you have to use your action to reload the clip, assuming that you have multiple clips. So if you're working with this board is getting cluttered. So if we're working with, let's take this back to the front. There we go. So if we're working with like a ballista, then as long as you have a carrying capacity or a mangolin, is that mangonel? What's the plural on that? Where were we inside the documents? Sorry, I got lost real quick. Hold on, going back. Right, document. Mangonel, that's the word. Mangonel is size large, so, and it does less damage than the trebuchet, so that probably means that the Mangonel large is probably going to throw size small stones as opposed to the trebuchet here, which is huge, which throws medium-sized stones, dealing roughly just about twice the damage that Mangonel Ballista do. So that makes sense. 3, 5, 4 in between, 8. So medium versus small. I mean, it still eats up the same space for cargo capacity because that's how you do cargo capacity. So the trebuchet would eat up this much space. So, and we already know that a 4x4 can't accommodate a 3x3 and a 2x2. So a 4x4 could, at best, you could have a ballista on the back of a 4x4 truck. Kind of like you could mount a ballista to the back of a gargantuan-sized creature. You see how this is working out? Now you have the ammo capacity here to be able to, like the ammo that the where'd you go, bucko? Here? No, wrong dock. Sorry. Go back to this one. Here. I'm juggling too many windows. Forgive my juggles. Mishaps, Infernal Machines. What does it say? Harpoon Flinger. The Harpoon Flinger has ammunition temper station. It's size medium. So this is telling us that each has a capacity of 10. So if you've got a ranged weapon here at a 5-foot square that's got 10 tiny size weapons that fit inside the small size space, which is sharing the space with this. And now if it's a large size weapon, that tells us that each one of these medium sized squares holds enough ammunition for 10, which means that if you're working a trebuchet, it has 10 shots per large size space that you're filling. This is how you can parse out ammo loadouts and you can build your infernal war machine. And so let's build another one. We already know that your max, let's say if we're building a Tormentor here, you got your H, you got your C, you've got your ballista here on the back. What does this thing look like? It's like this, and you've got your crew here, and it's got just this big ass ballista that sits off the back of it. This is a mobile war station. It is like ballista, and you could have mobile catapult. So you got your helm, you got your crew to pilot it, and then you got what's the plural on that again? Mangonels. Man goes now. Mangonel. You can have a mangonel here. And then, since that size large, you have carrying capacity of 1, 2. You got 3, and you got 3 open spaces, which you can fill with 30 shots, or you could have, if you want to be on the run, you could have 10 shots, and then you got crew. What is the reload time on this piece of machinery? Mangonel. Let's see, must I need to load it in? It takes 2 actions to load the weapon, 2 actions to aim it. Oof, boy, that's horrible action economy. It's ridiculous that the action economy for the Mangonel is the same as the trebuchet. That, honestly, that doesn't make any sense to me. I would think that it would be 1 action to load, 1 action to aim, and then 1 action to fire it. Since it's smaller than the trebuchet, it has the same action economy. That doesn't make sense to me. So I'm going to be overriding this because it's a supplement and I can do that. So we would have to have a crew of 3 to be able to fire a mangonel once per round. So you could have a 1 space open for cargo, crew and crew and crew. That's 3 guys to fire the mangonel once a round. And if you're going to do that, then you're going to park it. You stop the thing. If you're driving, if you're on the go and you want to launch mangonels, trebuchets, and ballistas at people, it is going to be a disadvantage on your attack to fire siege weapons from a moving target against other things that are moving that could potentially juke and stuff like that. Maybe instead we'll make it that a siege machine, when it hits, it does area of effect damage within the size of the ammunition. So if a mangonel or ballista fires at another vehicle and it's firing medium-sized stuff, if it hits here, you could, well, that's fun, you could potentially have it hit a random spot inside of here. And then, like if you were instead throwing a trebuchet stone at something, it could hit a size large inside of here. So inside, like if it hits, maybe they could do like a saving throw for half damage, perhaps. These are mechanics that I have not figured out. Like I said, today we're going over the basics of how this works. We now know that we can build Infernal Machines. Your DM may allow you to create war machines that are bigger than Gargantuan, using a 6x6 space here. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, this is a 6x6 that you could fit 1, 2 trebuchets on. You have your helm. And your pilot here. And you could have a ballista here. And you could have a ballista here. Nope, can't do that because you need to have cargo capacity for the trebuchet cargo, and you need capacity for the ballista ammo. We're going to call that, in this example, A. So you need trebuchet ammo, you need ballista ammo, you need ballista ammo. That means you need helm and pilot for the helm. And now you have space open for 2 crewmen to fire the ballistas while you're on the go, or the 2 of those guys. If you park this thing, you've got 3 guys that can be firing a ballista, or every other round that could be firing a trebuchet. Or if you've got 3 guys working 1 trebuchet, every other round they can fire 1 of these. Or another thing that you can do is you can have a munitions truck. It has its helm, has its pilot, and it's got ammo. It's got ammo. It's got all this for ammo. So it can be carrying a ton of this. This is a support truck. You could have it could be a scavenger that you've equipped to just carry just a ton of gear on it. You got your gear back here, and you got an extra crewman. You got your 3x3 capacity back here for ammo, and you've got a 2x2 spot here for ammo. This thing can carry literally a truck ton of ammunition to support the siege machine. So when you're dealing at the 50-foot scale, if you want to attack Zariel's flying fortress, what you need are siege trucks that you can then drop into this 50-foot square here. So this siege truck could be here, 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 or maybe here, and then you got a supply truck that's backing it up. So these guys are working together. The supply truck might be able to feed ammo to 2 siege trucks. You see what we're doing here? You can now build these things out. If I want to have because these trebuchets are dealing times 10 damage, and these ballistas are doing times 10 damage, which is how scale at 50 feet work. Like it would be doing like D8 times 10 damage. Let's go back to our vehicle here, and we're looking at 5d10. A trebuchet is doing 8d10. How about D8 times 10? Doesn't that just sync up? This all syncs up. So this just works. So so that's what we're building into. Today we just built the format for how do you build a template for creating vehicles at any size. And so when we come back next week, I think I'll have the opportunity to headspace this a little better, that we can start building out different trucks. We'll be able to take, I think at this point we're ready to build out the siege scaling weapon damage of a 50-foot structure versus a 5-foot scale structure versus a 500-foot structure. But this is the basics. We now have enough for us that you can go in and you can build your own Descent into Avernus Infernal War Machine. The only thing we haven't quite sussed out is if we're intentionally reducing, if we have a truck that can fit, like a scavenger that can fit in this 3x3 spot, if we're intentionally sacrificing space to have better performance, like faster movement speed, that's basically like engine block. So like these are engine spaces. And I'm thinking engines can either give us more go, or it can give us maybe more stats, better armor, maybe more hit points. So I think what we're going to be doing next is figuring out how can we use engine space to create more statistical advantage. So when we come back next week, we should have things parsed out so we know how much hit point capacity, how much armor class threshold, how much saving throws and damage and stuff like that would we be having on these vehicles when we hit the go button on them. So that's where we're at this week. I'm going to go ahead. I think I've been at this for a while, so I think this is the time to wrap up. Where are we at in this project? We're now at an hour and a half. Yeah, we hit our hour and a half mark, just plus a few minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and cut stream here. And when we come back the following week, we should have a bit more information about us creating this Infernal War Machines document for using in command. There's a lot going on here. So chances are what we're going to do is we're going to end up building this as a separate piece. That'll be 100% preview. That will be a sister document to the in-command document as a whole. I'll provide just the base minimums for how to create vehicles to be able to scale. It's going to be very similar in scaling to just using the weapons that we see, so you can see how these things can fit on the battlefield. But I think this is going to warrant its own complete layout. And I'm really looking forward to building that. As everything else, everything that I publish is always 100% preview. Purchase later if you like how it reads. But you can see here that we've got a really smooth model for being able to build out vehicles at essentially any scale. I suspect this is going to work well when Spelljammer comes out, working at the 50-foot or 500-foot, or if we're talking like Rock of Brawl, 100-foot scale, that we'll be able to build any flying vehicle, any floating vehicle, any driving vehicle to be able to work in the same scale in, scale out format, so that if you've got your 300-foot long Nautiloid cruising up to your 100-foot long Hammerhead ship, and you get within space of each other so that you're adjacent, you would then be able to scale into the 5-foot scale, the two ships facing each other, And then you could have your characters be doing combat back and forth at the 5-foot scale, and you could then zoom out to look at the siege machines lobbing bombs at each other's ship or targeting crew area to hit them for area of effect damage, to be able to have a character either choose to take up arms and making attacks, or to command a crew of ballisteers to fire javelin, fire 3d10 javelins as line effect lightning bolts, sort of piercing damage lightning bolts that'll hit this line, and anything that's inside of the area is going to have to make a saving throw to take that half damage off of that 3d10 damage. I think this is all going to curve out nicely, and we should be able to build it out to be able to work with Spelljammer's ships. So you saw it here first, folks, but it's probably going to take months for us to be able to actually have it finished. So I love streaming this stuff. When we go through the ideation process like we're doing here, we then convert it all into text. Once it's converted into text, I have my editor. Either I have additional writers to make actual sense, or we just kick it off to the editor, depending on what the deal is. Once the editor gets done with all the rewriting, and my additional writing crew finishes up the rewriting, it then comes back to me. I then do the layouts. Once the pages are laid out, then I come back through and do the illustrations. I then drop the illustrations into the layout, and once all that's done, I build the product page on DMsGuild, and then we publish it, and then it's live. And then I post the playtest, the playlist for this creation process. You'll see that in the product description down below underneath the product, and it'll be 100% preview for you to look at. So check down the other books that I've created. If you click into that and then you look at the 5-color mana spell point variant rule core mechanics, there's a YouTube link. I wasn't creating books live 2 years ago or whatever when I made that book, but there is a playtest that I did with Babies with Knives. It's 2 parts. It's 3 hours and then another 3 hours. Which is basically using 5-color mana in the Eberron setting, where the 6th level heroes are doing a temple raid, and I love that. It uses an airship, which we'll absolutely be able to use with this. I will eventually make that adventure into something for sale here on DMsGuild. You can check out Crystals of Mabar in my playlist links down in my playlists here on my channel. That'll lead you to the Crystals of Mabar Eberron adventure that I'm currently creating for 8th level characters. We are in the last stages of playtesting for that. I've already got maybe 20 hours racked up in that playlist stream of me illustrating the maps and doing ideation of how to build out the dungeons. Once that gets done with the writing, that's going to be probably the first thing that I'm done with writing. So that is going to switch over to me doing a dedicated weekly stream of artwork and map creation for that. Once this thing is done and it heads off, I can start working on the cover for it. As well as on Monday, we have Martial Powers Monday. That book isn't going to be publishing until probably second half of 2023, because I've been playtesting it with my home team for months. And if you check my Patreon link, not only is this in-command document available for you to click and look at the super rough version of the playtest document, as well as the super rough playtest document of the Martial Powers book that I've been producing, which I stream on Mondays. So subscribe. I'd love to have your just dollar support on Patreon. If you're a DM, if you're a 5th edition enthusiast, again, check out my stuff. If you're an MTG, Magic the Gathering color mana enthusiast, check my link down below. Read my books for free. Please buy them. All that artwork is me. You can see in my playlist down below or on this channel some of the artwork that I've done. I wasn't organized. I did it all on Twitch originally, and before I knew what I was doing, all that artwork pretty much got killed. I'm still trying to parse together pieces of it, and I will eventually I'll probably eventually have that stuff here on YouTube for you guys to look at, just to have more artwork. But there is going to be a ton of mapping of interior and cover art illustration that's coming through, plus the layout stuff. This is third-party content. Indie publishers like me, this is how we do it. When you have the ability to write, do layouts, do artwork, when you can do all this stuff yourself, when you can do all this stuff from front to back. That's what I'm trying to share here with you guys, so you guys see what process that goes along with it. And of course, if you like what you're seeing, comment, like, subscribe, share, and I just appreciate you guys being along for it. So I'll see you guys on the other side. I'm outie. I hope you have a great day.